Hi, thanks for your interest in this tutorial, how to build your own open source HAL 9000. I'm Aaron, and I'm going to be presenting this tutorial at Linux Fest Northwest 2018. We're going to have a lot to get through when we're together at the fest. The goal of this tutorial / workshop is to actually build a voice-activated virtual assistant out of open source tools. This virtual assistant is not going to rely on any web services for its basic functionality. So all of the speech-to-text and text-to-speech processing is going to happen locally. You're going to have control over that. What I'm going to need you to bring with you is a copy of Debian Stretch, which has been installed into a virtual machine and has access to the speakers and microphone of the host machine. Generally, I would expect that you would probably bring a laptop. You might also want to bring a pair of headphones, which could be helpful when it comes to the testing phase, just to see if it actually works, because it works best in a quiet place. So let's go ahead and start building our virtual machine. I've already downloaded the install media. I downloaded the first DVD from the Debian 9 Stretch installer. I'm going to stick with the x86-64 architecture because that's what the host machine is. I'm actually using Debian because it's what Raspbian is based on, and this project will actually run on a Raspberry Pi. So, because it will run on a Raspberry Pi, I'm going to go ahead and leave the RAM at only 1 gig. I'm going to bump up the CPUs to 2 because the Raspberry Pi 3 has a quad-core CPU. So does my host machine here, so I'm going to split 2 CPUs to the host machine and 2 CPUs to my virtual machine. We don't really need 20 gigs of RAM or of hard drive space. I'm going to knock that down to 10. We could probably get away with 8, but just to give myself a little extra space, I'm going to stick with 10. I'm going to name this Jasper Debian. Jasper is the open source project that is the glue that will connect all of the different parts, and was part of the reason why I was how I got interested in this in the first place, because it had all these connections for different text-to-speech and speech-to-text engines. NATed network is fine. So graphical install is fine. English, United States, American English. So these kind of virtual assistants have suddenly become fairly popular in the wider culture. And I really wanted to see what could be done with open source tools. At the same time that these virtual assistants have been coming up, let's see, it's a we can just do a pretty simple password here, and I need my button, so I'm going to expand out to full screen. My user, I'm going to go ahead and call it Jasper, and use Jasper as the name. I'm going to use the same password for the user. We're going to install sudo, and I'm in Pacific time. We're going to install sudo, and we're going to probably disable, I would disable the actual root account as far as being able to log in with it. But I'm not going to show that in this tutorial. So I'm going to use LVM just because it makes it easier if you actually want to expand your hard drive. If you really get into extending this thing and want a bigger hard drive for some reason, it's easier and less freaky than if you have to expand the hard drive, the raw disk. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and say all files in one partition. Don't really need to mess around with partitions. So go ahead and write these changes to disk. And let's see, I've got a gig of swap. I've got an ext boot drive and an ext4 main drive, and that's all. That's fine. So basically just accepting the defaults for the most part. Anyway, like I was saying, as these virtual assistants have become more popular, at the same time we're becoming more aware of how much information people or companies are gleaning from our seemingly not very interesting metadata, you know. Being able to see when we're talking to our computers, being able to see how we use our devices as the Internet of Things takes off. At the same time, a lot of our Internet of Things devices don't work if they lose their connection to the Internet. You know, even functions that you wouldn't think would have anything to do with being connected to the Internet stop functioning. So that's a big part of how I got interested in this. I wanted to see what could be done with open source tools where I would feel confident that my interactions with the computer were not being monitored, aggregated, sold. I think that's part of the reason why I use Linux also. Okay, I'm not going to use a network mirror. I am going to go ahead and load it off the DVD. Again, part of this is to build a machine that functions without an internet connection. So, I don't know what the Wi-Fi situation is going to be at Linux Fest this year. It's usually really good. The Bellingham Technical College does an excellent job of rolling out Wi-Fi and making it available to everybody. But in general, I don't like to rely on services like the internet being up and available when I'm giving a tutorial. So I am going to say, let's just stick with this base install. And I'm actually going to prepare a tarball, which will have all of the files that you need in order to install everything once you get to the fest. And I'm going to make that tarball available for download before the fest. And if you would download it before then, that would be great. I will put the URL for that tarball somewhere on my GitHub page. And no, I'm not going to participate in the package usage survey. Again, I'm sure it would be helpful for Debian, and really I'm happy to talk to Debian about what I'm doing, but I really don't want to be watched. So I'm not going to participate in the package survey. And okay, so we really don't need a print server. You might want to install that later, but for the basic thing, we don't need that. We also don't need a desktop environment. It just takes up a lot of space and processor cycles. And we're going to be using this computer by voice commands and through the command line. So we need an SSH server, or I highly recommend that you use the SSH server. And other than that, we just need the standard system utilities. So let's see. I may have run out of things to say. Anyway, I'm pretty impressed at what can be done using Pocket Sphinx and Deep Speech. Pocket Sphinx is a hidden Markov model speech-to-text processor that uses probabilities to determine what you're saying by examining sound files. Okay, yes, install the grub bootloader to the master record, and yes, just the root of VDA is fine. And Deep Speech is the newest based on ANN, which works very differently. So let's go ahead and log in. Jasper and my password. So the first thing that I'm going to do is su into root, which is the same password. And what I want to do is add the CD-ROM as a repository so that we can install some basic packages that weren't installed in the base install. Oh, and I always forget to do this. When it reboots, it disconnects from the DVD. So I just went in, selected CD-ROM 1, put my ISO image back into it, and now I'm back here. Press enter. Okay. So now I just want to install sudo, and this will allow me to do the rest of the work from my regular user account without having to be root the whole time, which I just find it to be better practice, so that's what I'm doing. Plus, you'd have to have your machine running as root the whole time if you do all of the installation under root. Okay, so I'm going to add the sudo group to my user and exit. And now I'm going to just reboot. Okay. So now I should be able to use sudo to install alsa-utils, which we are going to need. Yes, continue. And now it's just installing stuff off of the DVD. So I'm not going out to a cloud service for anything. And by doing this the same way, we'll all have exactly the same machine when we get in. So we should not have issues from machine to machine. So let's see. All that is left to do is actually test the microphone. So a record for 3 seconds out to test.lav. This is a test. And now a play. Okay, so that works. And that's what I need you to bring with you, is just a fresh copy of Jasper Debian that can record and play back from the microphone. And thank you very much. See you at the Linux Fest.